The show, we shall be having a live broadcast of the African Cup of Nations draw for 2025 Morocco, and of course you'll get a chance to know where which teams Uganda will be playing against in the African showpiece. And of course the footage that you're seeing is coming live from Morocco, and we shall be giving you that and more because the draws will be coming in here on your national broadcaster. Just a quick one: Uganda is in Port 3, so you never know who we will be playing against come the African Cup of Nations in 2025. But that mentioned, we are back here with the issues to do with the public concern. The front bench goes hard this time round. Now, that mentioned, please be part of the conversations, 0709-602-592, and share with us your opinions on what is at stake here and what you think the ministry should address in 2025. We're just one month away, 2025, only 27 days in out of the 365. You never know, many things can change as we are also heading into the political months, so to say. But that mentioned, let me get to the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs. Mr. Robert Kasanda, I wonder, what is the constitutional mandate of the ministry? If you can give us a breakdown of the same, the vision of the ministry, and of course, how it aims to serve the Ugandans better.
Okay, thank you very much. The mandate of the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs is to uphold the law, to drive forward the legal and justice system. In addition to that, reforming and safeguarding the Constitution to be able to effectively and efficiently serve the public. In addition to that, we facilitate an efficient and effective mechanism for creating a conducive framework for good governance. And that is done by largely 4 directorates of the ministry. The first one is the Directorate of Civil Litigation, that largely represents everything government and its allied institutions in courts of law. Then we have the Legal Advisory Services Directorate, that if this country wants to sign any agreement, any treaty, it has to go through the Attorney General's chambers and led by the Directorate of Civil Litigation, rather of Advisory Services. We have the first Parliamentary Council that is very much in the thick of drafting laws. All the legislation that is enacted in this country is done by the first Parliamentary Council. Then we have the Administrator General's Office that is responsible largely for administration of estates of deceased persons and people of unsound mind. And lastly, we have the Law Council that regulates the legal profession. Any lawyer in town who wants to set up a law firm, he has to have the approval of the Law Council. This we do together with our allied institutions. We have 7 allied institutions that we collaborate very closely. One of them is the Electoral Commission. We have the Uganda Registration Services Bureau. We have the Uganda Law Reform Commission, the Office of the DPP, the Uganda Human Rights Commission, and the Judicial Service Commission, and Law Development Center. So in a nutshell, this is what largely the Ministry of Justice is all about in undertaking our assignments. Yeah.
Okay. And Honorable, you recently convened an international conference on the alternative dispute resolutions, and one may wonder with this particular one that you had with the Uganda Law Society and the judiciary in partnership, do we have hopes that we shall be having, strategic value of rolling out ADR mechanisms like mediation in our justice system as we grow deeper in understanding the law as a country?
In any society, Joram, there are bound to be disputes. Normally, when people have disputes, they go to court. But courts are not part of the dispute, and neither are the lawyers. the way news is reported, the way lawyers are so outspoken about disputes, sometimes you may think they are parties to the dispute. The truth is that these are disputes between and among the citizens. Ideally, not all cases should go to court. Even now, I don't think cases which go to court make 15%. So how are the 85% of disputes settled? They are settled in communities. Elders call people, parents, some of them are handled by church leaders or religious leaders for that matter, traditional leaders. The ADR, as we call it, the Chief Justice of Uganda prefers to say it is the original dispute resolution system because it is the one which is truly African. He says the one which was bequeathed to us by the British should actually be the one to be called the alternative dispute resolution. In my first 2 months in the ministry, I initiated a process of consultations with the judiciary and other lawyers, all the stakeholders. And through that process, we have developed an ADR policy. And with the support of our technical team in the Ministry of Justice, that policy is now ready to be tabled before the cabinet. That is a major outcome. It is going to be groundbreaking. Also note that the Center for Dispute Resolution, known as CADA, has now been disbanded. The law was repealed. Through the Arbitration and Conciliation Act has been amended, which has dissolved CADA, or rather rationalized, to use the common word. That organization is now going to be a department under the Ministry of Justice. That is going to be the body to organize for the training of people to preside over mediation processes, arbitration processes, conciliation, generally to help people settle their disputes. It will also enable them to accredit those who want to be practitioners of ADR. I'm happy to inform you, Joram, that over a period of 18 months, together with 10 other people, including the Chief Justice, Deputy Chief Justice, and many other justices, we went through a course of study and we got qualified with a master's in dispute resolution from Pepperdine University. So we know what we are talking about. You can call us the Supremos of ADR in Uganda. It was a very intense course. We graduated in March last year. When Cabinet approves that policy, we will then disseminate it so that the courts, given the stance of our Chief Justice and the majority of the judiciary, many of the cases will be diverted for mediation. And through mediation, the courts will be decongested so that the really contentious cases are the ones which will end up before a judge.
Okay. And well, of course, to your dear viewer, I think this particular one gives you a ground breaking room where you can easily crack a question from the SEM. And let me head to the Permanent Secretary. When you look at the challenge of affordable legal services to all Ugandans, it has become a bigger issue over the years. And one may wonder, what initiatives is the ministry employing to ensure that justice prevails, but at the same time, legal services are very affordable and accessible to all the Ugandans, inclusive of the vulnerable groups, like the women, persons with disability, and the poor?
Thank you very much, Joram. One of the things that we have set out to do as a ministry is to bring the services of justice close to the populations of Uganda. And as a result, we have 7 regional offices
Okay.
In the country. However, even when we've done that, we face a challenge where the judiciary is much well equipped. They are opening court circuits all over the country, and therefore you find that, for instance, a regional office that is in Gulu has to travel 250 kilometers out to get to a court circuit in Nebi, in Moyo, and then they have to return, and tomorrow they are going somewhere else at a different direction as far as Masindi from Gulu. Similarly, a regional office in Mbarara has to cover a coverage of 15, 20 districts within that sub-region. So we are trying to address that challenge by also trying to create new regional offices, at least increase them to 10 for the start. We also coordinate some institutions that run legal aid clinics, like Justice Centers Uganda. We support those institutions so that they can interact with the populations, especially in the rural areas.
Okay.
And therefore we have set up, using the wider jealous institutions, we have set up collaboration. For instance, when we are dealing with the SGBVs, sexual and gender-based violence, we collaborate with the prisons, we collaborate with the Ministry of Gender, we collaborate with the judiciary itself, so that the people we can find them where they are located.
Okay. And on the same, on the same bit of the conversation, Honorable, I would like to bring you in. As much as we're talking about access to legal services, but there is an issue of access to justice. And many Ugandans have always been coming out and crying out to the government, saying the vulnerable groups less privileged when it comes to the law, and at times they don't meet the justice that they are supposed to meet. I wonder if there are strategic reforms and, of course, policies that the ministry is working upon to ensure that access to justice is something that every Ugandan gets to receive.
Access is about proximity. We are dealing with that problem. It's in the strategic plan of the government to ensure that every district will have a high court. That means there will be a high court judge sitting at every district headquarters. We are also planning to amend the Magistrate Courts Act to increase the monetary limit of cases that magistrates' courts can handle. Right now, many cases are being pushed to the High Court because there are limitations on the value and the amount of money that magistrates can handle. Also, the Court of Appeal will now have 4 circuits. There will be Kampala, of course, which is the seat of the judiciary. Then there will be one in Gulu for northern Uganda. There will be one in Mbarara and another one in Mbale. Now, financial access is one tricky issue. Let me disclose to you, Joram, that I cut my teeth as a lawyer for the poor. I was the lawyer who was assigned to establish the legal aid project of Uganda Law Society in northern Uganda. It was donor funded. We are now under pressure from citizens and the parliamentarians to make government pay for legal aid. And I think it is right. We cannot have a justice system which excludes the poor. We are, however, concerned that if we advise the government to take over all cases, it will almost be difficult to sustain it. Our international partners have cut funding, as you know, for a number of reasons, some of which we have discussed. And with the coming in of the new administration in the United States,
new executive orders,
further cuts are anticipated. But he is a political leader. We also have a political leader heading the Uganda government. There will definitely be negotiations and trade-offs. So not all hope is lost. We expect that we will start in a modest way. So I would like to promise the parliamentarians and all those people who don't have access to justice because of financial reasons that this year we will prioritize the legal aid bill. Already in the course of next month, we will convene a meeting at the Ministry of Justice, call the promoters of the legal aid bill in Parliament, and together with the Attorney General and other stakeholders, we plan how to start modestly. I believe government has a duty to invest some money in legal aid. That will reduce the outcry of the people. The literacy is also important. Our laws are written in English, so many people actually do not know what the laws say. And so we have a duty to teach people what the law says, starting with the supreme law, the Constitution, and then all the other laws, so that citizens can know their rights. The way people feel like courts are doing them a favor, the way they feel like when they go to report a case in the police is doing them a favor. And in this country, sometimes when you ask a police officer who is arresting you, can you tell me why you are arresting me? You receive a slap instead of an answer. These are things that we have got to confront and deal with boldly. We need Ugandan citizens to know that it's really, really a great thing to be a citizen. Title of citizen must be the most important title in our society. And citizens deserve justice when they have disagreements or disputes with other citizens. Also, the speed of determining cases. Lawyers have made it a habit to file so many applications to delay the hearing of the main cases. In meetings with the Chief Justice in the judiciary, we have generally encouraged them to dispose of these interlocutory applications, application for interim order this, interim order that, so that they go straight to the substance of a particular case. These are the things that cause unnecessary delay. Also, when the courts act quickly, then allegations of corruption will disappear. Why would you take ages to decide a case? When you have had a case, you should come and read the judgment quickly. We, as the ministry, in consultation with the judiciary, have increased the number of high court judges. So far, it is up to 151, and for the Court of Appeal, it is 35. So there is actually no excuse. The President and indeed the Cabinet has been at the forefront of advocating for increased budget for the judiciary. We also expect the same to be done for our state attorneys. After all, what is the point of a judge sitting in court with the lawyers representing other parties, and then the government lawyer is absent, either because he doesn't have the means to reach the court, or is simply overwhelmed by the number of cases. These are matters that determine access to justice.
Okay. And Honorable, before anything else, let's talk matters corruption. And every time we're having a conversation, corruption never goes out of the way, because every time in the country here, not only in the public service, by the way, but also in the private sector, there is always some allegation somewhere. And when it comes to the side of the judiciary, when it comes to the side of the law, at times many people believe some of the judges at the forefront of the same. Now, I wonder, though, what concrete measures is the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, together with the Justice, Law and Order sector, doing to ensure that we deal with these corruption cases and scandals in the country?
Joram, I would like to discourage Ugandans from generalizing. For instance, people believe all politicians are corrupt. That is not necessarily true.
That is what many Ugandans on ground believe.
I can tell you I don't buy votes, I don't receive bribes, and neither do I give bribes. I'm a Ugandan. I live in a society. Not that people have not attempted to suggest corrupt dealings, but nobody has come to me frontally. I know it's not prudent or even reasonable for me to dismiss allegations of corruption. There is corruption. There are also situations where parties to a court are asked to pay money. I know that some of that money actually does not even reach the so-called judges. Let me tell you an interesting story. One day, a particular clerk in the court went and told a lawyer, because clerks generally can read the files of judges. This clerk knew what the decision would be. The clerk then went and told the lawyer of the winning party, in quotes, that if you give this amount of money, I will give it to the judge and you will surely win the case. He already knew what would be decided. So the lawyer went and asked the client, and the client parted with some money. The clerk pocketed the money. Unfortunately for the clerk, the judge had a change of mind. Sometimes you may write a judgment when you are not aware of some cases that may influence your decision. In the course of thinking about the judgment, the judge found an authority, a case which was very helpful for him to determine the case the other way. So he changed the judgment. So on the day of the ruling, this lawyer and his client went with their puffed up chests to await to celebrate victory. And then a different judgment was read. So this client complained to the lawyer. And the lawyer said, well, I think we need to go to see the judge because this is now important. So this client and the lawyer went and asked the judge, what happened? We paid. And the judge said, I have not requested and neither have I received any money. He then summoned the clerk who had been accused as the person who was to deliver the money. And all hell broke loose. So sometimes there's a danger in generalizing. That said, let me promise our viewers one thing. The Constitution of Uganda has some very radical proposals on dealing with judges who are fond of misconduct, either corruption or any other form of misconduct. I don't think it is a very good law because it brings us, the executive, into the disciplining of judges, but it is there. So I want to tell our viewers that under Article 144 of the Constitution, Cabinet can actually initiate an investigation of a judicial officer. Cabinet can make a resolution asking the Judicial Service Commission to ask a judicial officer to step aside while the accusations are being investigated. So let me state here on the national television that if there are people who have hard evidence, don't hesitate to come. I'll also not hesitate to move Cabinet to set an example using whichever case you think is appropriate.
Okay.
That is the only way we can show that we are serious.
And to your dear viewer, I'm seeing some comments coming through. I'm going to go through the bit of these particular comments. My guests will be responding to some of them. Please do continue having those concerns shared with us. The hashtag on X is UBC Frontbench. The phone number is 0709602592. The conversations continue online. After the break, we get into these questions. And of course, my guests will be willing to respond to some of them. Good evening.
This is the Front Bench. Fellow countrymen and women, These are our ministers and permanent secretaries at the front bench representing the various ministries and answering the questions that matter to us. Join the conversation. This is the front bench. In a nation hungry for truth, a world where every story matters, there exists a beacon of trust and reliability. For decades, they've been our voice and our window to the world, holding the mirror of our history. With 4 TV stations and 11 radio channels spanning 27 languages, they stand as guardians of information, defenders of truth. With Mascari Heritage Advantage, they uphold every citizen's right to reliable and free information. Their archived stories shaped our past and illuminate our present. Yet now, as new challenges arise and the world evolves, their mission faces its greatest test yet. Be part of our journey and let's navigate the unknown, uncover the untold, and safeguard our future together. Tune into your public broadcaster, for it is the intersection of trust and truth. Because to UBC, your story, and every voice matters. UBC, inspiring Uganda. This is the front bench.
I've been going through the comments and I've noticed someone asking about the African Cup of Nations draws for the 2025 tournament that will be held in Morocco. And earlier on I did mention that that draw will be coming to you live at 9:30 p.m. here on your national broadcaster. And as you can see, the preparations are underway to ensure that the draw is a success. So, well, at 9:30 p.m. we shall, of course, be taking you there to understanding of what Uganda will be, or which teams Uganda will be facing in the African Cup of Nations in 2025 in Morocco. Now, away from that, I have questions coming in from the viewers' side, and I'll start off with Henry Waswa. And Henry Waswa said, thanks for getting us Honorable Mao. We have cases We have a case or cases of people like Dr. Besigye and his lawyer, Elon Kiza, charged in army courts. And he asks, how can we come up with a strong statement on this in regards to the legal fraternity and also democracy?
In this very studio, we have discussed that question. And I stated very clearly what the primary role of the court-martial is, which is to ensure discipline in the armed forces. Now, we should talk like people who live in the real world, in which which world we call Uganda. I do not want to preempt what the Supreme Court is going to decide. It's really not even so much about the trial in the court-martial. It is the images that have been coming out. If you are having lawyers in a shouting match with the army officers who are in court, and then you have the kind of process which led to the incarceration of Elon Kiza, these are really the things people are reacting to. I don't think that this matter has been as emotive as it was in the past. So I would advise all our viewers, let's wait and hear the last word from the Supreme Court of Uganda.
Okay. Well, of course, Waswa, I think you've got
And meanwhile, we really call upon everybody to have good manners. First and foremost, you see, I have said here before that they call it a court-martial because first and foremost, it should be a court. And the court should be a dignified place. But sometimes we have seen things going out of hand in our country, even in churches. Some time back there was an incident in Kisoro, the Diocese of Kisoro, where some Christians who didn't like the bishop put a needle on the bishop's chair. And when the bishop sat, you can imagine what happened to him, the pain with which he jumped up. So this should be an exception rather than the rule. That is really my personal opinion. It should not be the rule that everybody should be taken to the court-martial. Okay. At the same time, we need to realize that a lot of things can be discussed. When you go as a lawyer before the court-martial, you should be protected as a lawyer. Now, those are concerning the rules. We need to look at the rules of the court-martial, and if they need to be reviewed, they should be reviewed.
Okay.
And by the way, the court-martial is also under the law.
It's a court.
It should be under the law. It is also governed by law.
Okay.
Yeah, there is no, because it is a court-martial doesn't mean that it's above the law. Even war is fought under the law.
Okay.
And yet it is an activity for killing.
Okay.
But it's governed by law.
I have a comment from Slivia Faith who says, I'll direct this to the PS. Thank you for the show. Oh, my name is Sarah. My question is, what are you doing to bring lawyers who think that they are above the law? For instance, one is violent, an abuser, and even when reported and summoned, they won't show up.
Jerome, as you know, and I said earlier, that we have the Law Council. One of the mandates of the Law Council is first to license the lawyers that operate in this ecosystem. But two, if they are errant, to discipline them. And so therefore, a mechanism exists, and if they have wronged someone, I have had cases where lawyers have gotten their awards that have been given to their clients and they have taken them. My recommendation would be that people should utilize the services of the Law Council to have those errant lawyers disciplined.
And Honorable, there's a gentleman here, he says, call me Weki Lubanga. I don't know if it's his name, but he says I should call him that. He comes from Gulu City. When we talk about rules of law, to me, I understand it in this way, that there is no one above the law. He mentions, but in Uganda, people are acting ultra vampires because things that are happening these days are not right. And the government can just keep quiet, and yet it's against the law. For instance, he shares an experience of a woman who was beaten in Dokolo district, and the reason that was given was she was a thief. He says it was not right, and it sends a bad image to their community. He's asking, with this kind of unlawful death, how can justice prevail, and which advice could you give in this incident?
Now, the reason we have a state is to ensure that citizens are safe. The state should be so powerful that nobody should be able to challenge it. So if that has happened in Dokolo, that is clearly a serious sign of weakness. That's not the only case. You try, if you are driving, to have a collision with a border. Whether the border is in the wrong, they will come and create a mob, and they will make you feel like you are guilty. Now, there should be incidents where that kind of lawless conduct is handled with an iron fist, so to speak. We just need to set some clear examples. He says he's from Gulu City.
Yes.
As he walks around, does he see how garbage is thrown all over the city? Actually, we must start by talking about the smallest possible laws to the biggest. Now, killing a person is now at the apex of criminal conduct. But there are little things, certain kind of culture. Did you see that woman who slapped a police officer?
Yes.
Yes. So we must change our civic culture. And the way to change the civic culture is to draw a very firm line to protect the majority of the citizens who are law-abiding. By the way, those who misbehave, who disobey the law, are a tiny minority. But the fact that somehow they get away with what they do, we normalize it. So we must stop normalizing misconduct by anybody.
Okay. And I have an interesting question, and it also goes to you. This says, I am Niwagaba, and I have a question for the Honorable. As a Minister of Justice and a lawyer, what will you do for the courts in Uganda where we find people swearing only using the Bible, Quran, the books for foreigners, and yet not everyone in this country believes in those books? He asks, where is justice?
Anybody knows that you don't need to swear by those holy books. You can affirm. So it's not true. Mr. Nwagaba, please do not mislead our innocent viewers that anybody in court will force a Bible or a Quran upon you. You can just raise your hand and affirm. Otherwise, how do witch doctors testify? Those who don't believe in God. There is room for everybody in this country. I've even seen witch doctors putting posters in some districts. So those who don't wish to swear by any of the holy books can always affirm.
Okay. And, well, I do have more concerns and comments coming through here, trying to go through. This would say, my name is Sophie. I would like to know how we can honestly uphold the rule of law. And I think, P.S., you can handle this for me. She says, and also the contradictions of the Constitution against the principle of the rule of law. So I think her major issues are on the issue of how we can honestly uphold the rule of law in this country.
Upholding the rule of law has two facets.
Okay.
One, the population themselves must be able to respect the law. If you think that everything should be done by government, by the justice system, I think that's where, first and foremost, we make a mistake as Ugandans. But the institutions that we represent work very strongly for the populations. That's why I was telling you that, for instance, if you're looking at socio-economic development, you realize that, taking an example of the legal advisory services, we work very hard to ensure that the contracts that we approve for government come in on time. And what that means, if a contract from a Ministry of Infrastructure like Ministry of Works comes in on time, that ministry is able to undertake that project. The people who get that service, in most cases, will be happy. And we believe that our role is to ensure that Ugandans are getting the right services, and therefore that reduces their conflict with the law.
And PS, I do have a question here, and it's not coming from the viewers. I wonder, though, the government is in the process of enrolling the National Development Plan 4. When you look into this, why is it critical for the ministry to focus on, for example, issues to access justice, and then also in regards to the socio-economic development of the country as we are heading into NDP 4?
First and foremost, I strongly believe that a conducive and predictable justice ecosystem is good for socio-economic development. Having said that, even if you look at, in the last 2-3 years, we have had sustainable increase in foreign direct investments that have come in this country. To me, that means that there is some respect and belief in the justice system.
Okay.
Two, the efficiencies that are run by the Directorate, for instance, of Civil Litigation, has led this country to, or this ministry and the Attorney General's chambers, to win cases that if they hadn't been won, would have had to pay a hefty bill of sometimes a total of 3 trillion shillings. What that means is that that money has gone back to productive sectors, and therefore leading to socio-economic development. So that's why for us we think that we need a conducive and predictable ecosystem of justice that will allow socio-economic development.
Okay. And Honorable, when you look at, you know, the recent trends within the country, especially from the international perspective, or how they perceive human rights, you realize that we face significant scrutiny from the international human rights organizations. This is in regards to freedom of expression, the press itself. And then also we've seen the rise of social media activists in the country. Many of those have been very vocal on X. As of last year, they were so very active, I should say. One may wonder what is the role of the ministry in this regard, in ensuring that human rights are respected within the countries, and how do you respond to criticism that seems to be affecting the justice delivery in the country?
The state has power, and it has the legal right to exercise that power. Sometimes the agents of the state abuse their power, and the same state should have mechanisms for dealing with the abuse of power. The entire chapter 4 of the Constitution is devoted to human rights. And in the Ugandan Constitution, we elevate our standards to the international standards. That's why the Constitution says there shall be no derogation from these rights except those that are demonstrably justifiable in a free and democratic society. So we have a very high standard. Now, the debate on human rights is being clouded by politics. When you have human rights violated, for instance, torture, Uganda has a very strong anti-torture law. And it is actually possible to fight torture using the law, because the law on the enforcement of human rights allows a citizen of Uganda to file a case against an individual police officer, an individual army officer. And it has happened. Individual officers have been taken to task for what they have done. You have had cases where police officers have been dismissed. You remember that a Deputy Inspector General of Police was sacked after the 2020 shootings in Kampala City. Now you talk about freedom of speech. I've been to many countries, and by the way, it is only in Uganda where things that happen in court are relayed live. America is said to be a model of freedom. Have you ever seen a live broadcast of a court case in America? It doesn't exist. They always have somebody, a painter, to draw the characters in the court. But here in Uganda, whatever is happening is broadcast live. The quarrels by lawyers and so on. I think our citizens really have every freedom to insult and abuse. I wish they would go and live in some of our neighboring countries and attempt the kind of things that they do here. So I don't think freedom of speech is restricted in Uganda. Two, what does the Ministry of Justice, what are our plans? What do we intend to do? We have developed the National Action Plan for Human Rights. Incidentally, those letters in the Constitution don't act on their own. They need the vigilance of citizens, and that is where civil society organizations come in. And from the very time I assumed office as a minister, I have told the civil society organization, you must stand in the gap to push the government to do the right thing. But don't act like political parties. If you want to really confront the president and remove him from office, form a political party and tackle him. But if you create an NGO and your agenda is regime change, then you are no longer a civil society organization. Even the language, you start calling the government a junta. So now, because I'm a minister, so now I'm a member of a junta. Do people know really what a junta is? The day we actually have a real junta in Uganda, then Ugandans will know what a junta is. We have encouraged the government officials, and in particular the president, not to designate the civil society activists who criticize government policy as enemies. Because really, enemies are confronted by UPDF. These are opponents. The NGOs, these are our opponents. They are opposing our ideas, but we believe our ideas are right, so we also defend them vigorously. Okay. So rather than name calling, either saying you are serving an interest of an enemy country, or you yourself, you are an enemy, and so on, we should instead occupy the space available to correct citizens. That's why we are here. Anybody can stand up and say, no, but Mao, all the ideas you have said are extremely stupid. They are entitled to their stupid opinion also, I would say. But I will always take every opportunity to vigorously defend what I believe to be right. So when the National Action Plan for Human Rights comes into force, we will empower citizens. We have a desk for human rights at the Ministry of Justice. I hope soon we shall have a hotline. Many times we are called. I get called. And also because some of the abusers of human rights are informal actors, actually. there are actors in Uganda who, on account of some connections with security forces, have become abusers of human rights. The real UPDF and the Uganda police, I think they can be held to account. But we also have within the state those who conduct themselves like these Fangon thugs and so on. Now, those ones have got to be restrained and dealt with. Okay. Anybody who is enforcing Ugandan law should be proud of their work. If I'm coming to handcuff you, Joram, I should do it with pride because I know I'm doing it for the greater good. I don't have, we have people who, in Barara one time, the police was supervising an eviction and the tearing down of a house at midnight. So I called the Inspector General of Police. If you are doing something which is right, why do you have to do it at midnight? Okay. So these are the Ministry of Justice has to be a vigorous advocate for the Constitution and constitutionalism, without fear or favor. Our role is to be the linesmen. When anybody crosses the line, we must raise the flag.
You raise the flag.
We may not be having the power to force you to do the right thing, but at least we raise the flag so that everybody knows that you have crossed the line.
Okay. And of course, with that, we're going to be taking the parting shots of my guests this evening. I'll start with the Permanent Secretary. PS, I would like in your parting shots to help us understand, as the ministry is taking lead in the construction of an office park known as the Justice, Law and Order Sector House. What is this project and how significant is it? And then also if you can sum it up with the rapid advancements in technology and how the ministry is doing to integrate technological advancement in its work as we're summing up.
Starting with the Jealous House, it's a project that we started in 2022. And this is being developed at Naguru, near the current police headquarters. It is a project that will be a game changer because it's going to have many institutions that provide justice in the country in one house. Okay. And therefore, it's a one-stop center for real justice. And these institutions are Office of the DPP, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, Judicial Service Commission, Uganda Human Rights Commission. Currently, we're all renting, all those institutions that I've mentioned, renting, and we rent about 20,000 square meters, and we're spending 30 billion per year. And yet, when we move into these offices, we will be occupying three times the space, 60,000 square meters, and that saving, we believe, will help a lot in doing other things. For instance, for us to be able to build more regional offices. So that is the Jealous House. We hope to conclude the first phase of the 2 towers. There are 3 towers, 4 towers. We expect to conclude by June this year, the first 2 towers. And the police headquarters that we commenced is about 23% done, and that will be concluded next year. And then we'll commence the High Court Tower. In terms of the digitalization of the institutions, largely all the institutions of Jealous, we are working with our partners, one, to ensure that all the records in the ministry are digitalized. And that has become a very big step in terms of efficiencies. We are able to do things together with all the regional offices in real time. The judiciary has a digital system that they started to use during COVID time. So our Directorate of Civil Litigation is equally developing one that will be integrated with that of the judiciary and the DPP. So therefore we think that the justice system will be a lot more efficient after those systems are in place.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much for your time and being part of the conversation. Honorable, I'll be ending with you, and in your parting shots, I would like to hear from you in regards to what reforms in your view, should the justice system undertake to be more pro-people and, of course, a little bit more people-centric and responsive to the needs and the dreams of the many Ugandans who believe in fair justice for all?
Number one, justice should not be for sale. So we have to be hard on corruption. Number two, we should prioritize legal aid so that the poor can also have access to justice. Number three is, of course, elections. We are still fighting to make electronic voting compulsory. We hear cases of ballot stuffing. Only electronic voting can deal with that, because the people who have showed up at the polling station will be registered in that machine, and that machine will be analog. It will not have the capability to communicate with any other machine. So all those who are going around saying electronic voting will open Uganda's election to hackers, it won't happen, because that machine cannot communicate to anything. It is just a store. So if 300 people show up at a polling station and then you count 400 ballot papers, the presiding officer will go to jail. That is the law that we took as the Ministry of Justice to the cabinet. Finally, I repeat the main roles of the state, because it is important. Number one, to safeguard our borders. Our borders are the safest. There are incursions here and there, and the state should ensure that the territorial integrity of Uganda is guaranteed. Number two, the second role of the state is to ensure that no citizen terrorizes another citizen. So the state stands tall above all citizens to ensure that everybody enjoys their rights fully within the law. And thirdly, the state puts in place laws through parliament, and it does so collectively. The president is the one who must sign something for it to be called a law. During the process of law making, every Ugandan has a right to go and make all the noise in parliament so that they leave their footprint on any law. And where there's a dispute, the courts are there. And the fourth role of the state is to adjudicate disputes through the courts of law. Those four principal roles are fundamental. So if you are giving us marks, put those four at the forefront. Now, the state is run by people who have a political mandate. Now, many of the people who are messing up Uganda are people who are appointed by politicians. So we get a mandate, and then sometimes we hand the mandate over to those who are unelected. In reality, political leaders should steer the country, starting from the president and so on. In the Ministry of Justice, we want to commit ourselves to serving Ugandans. Our ministry is the most accessible ministry in Uganda. Citizens can attest to that. Good enough, we are just opposite Parliament. Many people who are bounced from Parliament come to the Ministry of Justice. We believe in teamwork. We hear of conflicts in some ministries between ministers, between minister and permanent secretary, and so on. We don't have that in the Ministry of Justice. It doesn't mean we don't disagree, but we find a compromise and we keep our eyes on the bigger picture. Imagine in the Ministry of Justice you have two senior ministers at the same rank. You have the Minister of Justice and the Attorney General. These are equal rank. The minister is the political head, but you have two senior ministers. In many ministries, we have got one minister and a minister of state or ministers of state, but you still find a lot of conflicts. We have tried to avoid that in order that we serve the country better. And there's zero leakage in the Ministry of Justice. Okay. Many ministries, are like a leaking roof, you know. Every information which is in the ministry finds its way on social media. We have a policy of zero leakage at the Ministry of Justice, because if the Ministry of Justice leaked, there would really be problems in this country, because there is no document which is not processed through the Ministry of Justice. Joram, even if the president appoints you, the instrument will be drafted from the Ministry of Justice very quietly by people you have never heard of, and the instrument of appointment sent to the president. So we are here to pledge to Ugandans that we will continue to be a very strong and trusted service ministry, because we serve everybody. We even serve LC3s. Can you imagine? When your village sub-county wants to pass a bylaw, they send it to us and we also look at it. So we serve everybody, and we commit to continue doing so faithfully.
All right. Thank you very much, Honorable, for your time. And to your dear viewer, thank you very much for being with us from 8:30 p.m. where we started. I've been having the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs at the front. I've been with the Honorable Norbert Mao, the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs. Thank you very much for being part of the conversation, Honorable.
Thank you, Joram.
And with him, he has moved with the Permanent Secretary, Mr. Robert Kasande, who has also been part of the conversation. Thank you very much, PS.
Robert Kasande is a geologist. Are you not impressed with his knowledge of the law?
Yes. And pretty much the same when you look back yesterday, the NRMA government was celebrating 39 years of the liberation. Now, in 1986, when they took power, after that in 1995, that is like 9 years after a new constitution, a new consensus constitution was promulgated. And then, I should tell you, that is like 30 years since we have a constitution of 1995. And of course, the rule of law has to be pushed further and beyond. But that mentioned, the front bench will return next week on Monday at 8:30 p.m. Do make sure that you join us. For now, I'll be leaving you with the feed that will be from the Total Energies African Cup of Nations draw. It is coming to you live from Rabat in Morocco, live from the National Theatre of Mohammed V. But before that, our symbol of unity, as we are saying, good evening and a good night.
Oh, Uganda, may God uphold thee. We lay our future in thy hand. United, free for liberty, together we'll always stand. Oh, Uganda, land of freedom, our love and labor we give, and with neighbors all at our country's call, in peace and friendship we'll live. Oh, Uganda, the land that feeds us by sun and fights our soul grown. For our own dear land, we'll always stand. Kapalapa, Africa's crown. African
This is the front bench. Fellow countrymen and women, these are our ministers and permanent secretaries at the front bench, representing the various ministries and answering the questions that matter to us. Join the conversation. This is the front bench.